Hey, thank you very much for coming out. I just want to thank everyone. I've heard from so many people in the last 72 hours from Western New York. It's really touched my heart. The amount of I never expected this much love, support, kindness. It really has meant a lot. I think back to the Vietnam generation and when they came home, and some of those veterans didn't even want to acknowledge that they served. They didn't want to wear their uniform. Uh, a lot of America put the policy of why they were deployed ahead of their valor. It seems that we've learned some of those lessons, and I just wish that more Vietnam veterans, Korean War, World War II, everyone, guys at VA hospitals can feel half of the love that Western New York has given to me, and most importantly, the Gold Star families in Western New York and Rochester. These men and women have given up their sons and daughters, and there's really, it's not just Memorial Day isn't one day a year for these families. It's every single day, and we still live with that, and we still think about them. I think about them too. I also want to say that there are members of the media here that are very good at what they do, and some of them knew about this a couple months back, and I don't know if it was fidelity to a reverence for the award or the institution, but I very much appreciate those in the media who did their homework and figured this out and did not leak it, did not break the story before the White House was allowed to do it. That really meant a lot to me in this whole process. This is a crazy, very difficult process. I don't think anyone that serves their country ever thinks that anything that they do on the battlefield are. We literally live minute to minute in a firefight, and anything can change. And I think of the men I served with, and I've got a team leader who saves his platoon from entering a building contained IED. That IED goes off, I lose my entire platoon. I think of young men who pull their buddies out of doorways, and you don't have time to immediately keep a scorecard of who's doing what and who's where in a firefight. It's about survivability. It's about coming home, and it's about achieving mission success. When you have an embedded reporter, when there's a journalist there, and you happen to have the Ernie Pyle of your generation and a guy like Michael Ware, who has obviously no regard for his own personal safety when he covers these stories. This is a guy who covered every aspect of that fight, and because of that, I think we're all here. People know 3rd Platoon, Alpha Company 2-2, 1st Infantry Division, because of the fights we got into. But again, this award, Fallujah, it's about Lieutenant Ed Iwan, our executive officer, Sean Sims, our company commander, Stephen Falkenberg, our command sergeant major, Scott Lawson, my buddy, who we lost in 2013, and Sergeant Madison, J.C. Madison from Celeron, New York. I'm trying to bring those families to Washington and as many of the guys that are still with us to D.C. so that we could all share this together. I also want to thank Syracuse Recruiting and Buffalo Recruiting. My entire Army career, not only was I recruited at Buffalo Recruiting Station, but my son was born with some medical issues, and we were lucky enough to have some pediatric nephrologists at Children's Hospital. And at the time, the Army didn't know what to do with me because my son was sick and he needed surgery as a newborn. And it was the Syracuse Recruiting Battalion. It was Buffalo, Maine Recruiting that took me on what's called a compassionate reassignment. And for 2 years, I was a recruiter guy who took cars to Delta Sonic and cleaned them and helped recruiting. And they didn't know what to do with me. But my entire career started in a recruiting battalion, and I'm very respectful for the important work you do. And if there's anything that could come out of this, hopefully young people in Western New York will see their country as more worthy than anything else in their life. We are a very special institution, the United States Army, and I encourage as many people to look at that as an opportunity to better themselves, but more importantly, better their communities and their country. With that, I'll take any questions that you have, and we'll get going.
David, can you walk us through a timeline that you had communications with the White House when this was first coming your way that you'd be receiving the Medal of Honor, and also congratulations?
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. Someone contacted me in October of 2018 and said that someone at the Pentagon wanted to talk to me. That could have been anything from, we'd like you to give a talk to an Army base, or we found a Zippo in Fallujah with your name on it. Would you like it back? I didn't think it was anything of any significance at all. And then I was told that a senior member of the DOD wanted to speak to me. And I really didn't know who that could have been. It could have been Secretary of the Army. It could have been Secretary of Defense. But that senior member of the DOD was very difficult to get on the phone. So no offense to Secretary of the Army, but I'm sure he's a busy person. But he can't be that busy, because there was a very difficult time to get that individual to allocate time. I had no idea that that senior member of the DOD was the senior member of the DOD and the Commander-in-Chief. And it was quite humbling. The President of the United States has probably the most famous person in the entire world, and everyone has been impersonating him forever. And so you think to yourself, is this just an Army guy busting my chops? Is this really happening, or is this the cruelest joke in the world? But it turned out that it was the president, and again, there was obviously a lot of reverence for what this is. I don't remember. You're getting the news all at once, and there's no stage of what is actually happening here. I had no idea at any point, outside of the media telling me that I was nominated for this award in 2005. I really had no idea what the process was. They don't update you and say, oh, by the way, you didn't make it, or oh, by the way, you're at this level. You don't ever know what the situation is. And President Obama and then Secretary Ash Carter went through all these Valor Awards, and it was a long process. And we're starting to see each branch, put out other recipients. But it was pretty humbling. It was pretty life altering.
Do you remember anything specifically the president had said to you?
I lost my dad a year ago, and yesterday would have been his 75th birthday, and it was pretty crazy that the White House announcement came on his birthday. But my dad was my hero. I loved him. I spent every day talking to him. When I deployed, my dad would he would type up play-by-play of the Buffalo Bills games as if I had no access to get scores in the Army or anything else. But he would take the time to write me a 6-page letter, single-spaced, on every play the Bills did. And I would read these no matter where I was, Kosovo, Germany, or Iraq. And that we just talked about the Bills, no matter how bad the day was. It was about the Bills. How are we doing? We could complain about that. And my dad would always tell me something, and I always thought he was just uncool because he was my dad, but he'd always say, way to go. He'd say, way to go, man. That's what my dad would say. And no one else has ever said that to me in my life, because it's not something you would expect anyone to say. But the whole conversation with the president, he's going on. I'm not even listening. I'm just kind of, but at the end of it, he said, good job, David. Way to go, man. That's what the president said. And I haven't heard anyone say that to me but my father. And it just brought me right back down to earth. And it was pretty emotional. And it was just, I don't know, maybe that's what 7-year-old men say to people. I don't know if that's like a thing, but to me, it was my dad saying that to me, and it really touched my heart. So that's what I remember.
You think in 2 weeks you have to go to Washington for that ceremony? Will it change your outlook on life, your past, anything different?
Sir, it's already changed everything. There are things that I did for a living. Sometimes, you think you're funny. Sometimes you want to make a point. Sometimes you think your opinion is important, and you don't think about other people. You don't think about people that have a difference of opinion of you, but your job is to just stir the mud. Your job is to get a reaction. This award is so, I have so much respect for the men who have worn this. I have so much respect for the men that we weren't able to take home and their families. And I have respect for the Iraq veteran, which, listen, I'm not going to pretend to write, the narrative of the Iraq war is well established, but the Iraq veteran has nothing to apologize for. The Iraq veteran has served with the same of the finest traditions of any other generation at war. And, there's a whole lot of men and women who, everything's changed. I can't, I have to represent those people because that's what we have to do,
When you get that award in your hand and you be looking at your family, what will go through your mind?
I don't even, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even think about that. I never in a million years, like there's some people that practice Oscar speeches when they're in their fifth grade play. I've never been that, person. I always found myself, I just wanted to be the guy that took stressful young people and made them laugh, focused young guys on the mission at task. I don't think people truly understand. I was older than the rest of the guys that I served with. I had college behind me. I was a father. I was a husband. Most of these guys were young. They were 19, 18 years old. I love them like they were my own kids. I still love them like they are my family. I love them with everything. And the idea that my little boy could be scared somewhere far away or hurt or bleeding, there has to be someone that steps up and loves that son or daughter as much as their parents do. And that's all I think about. And so my experience in the military was never about what is going to happen when we come home. It's, are these guys going to be okay? And we lost more in other subsequent deployments. And that's even more difficult because now you weren't with them. You weren't there to be with them when they were killed in Afghanistan or another deployment to Iraq. But I never thought about this day happening. I never thought about this, it's like a UN, I feel like Kavanaugh, like this is not something that I signed up for or was expecting. But I'm not going to let the Army down. I'm not going to let 2-2 Infantry down. And I'm not going to let the 1st Infantry Division down. Those men are very important to me.
But realistically, you mentioned that you were older than the rest of you. Do you think maybe your leadership skills, your parental skills, put you in a position where now you stood out and now you're being recognized for it?
I don't think that, I'm going to tell you something right now. I know people want to act like because you go to the military, you get the world-class training, and our equipment is incredible. Our training is elite. We're professionals. Those men 75 years ago on D-Day were not professional soldiers. They got 6 weeks of training, and they slapped the Nazis around. We are a professional military. This is what we choose to do. It's 1/10 of 1% of our population. But what makes the American military world-class has nothing to do with our equipment. It has nothing to do with our training. It has to do with why we're there. It's what we believe in. It's our community. It's our relationships with each other. It's that love, that bond. You're fighting for, there's 1,000,007 reasons why people are divided when they walk outside. But I don't have time for that. I don't have time to judge you for who you worship. I don't have time to judge you by what you look like or who you love. If you are willing to stand with me and get shot at, then I'm willing to lead you. I'm willing to follow you. And I'm willing to take out whatever we have to take out because we're coming home. And if you get hurt, I'm going to be so close to you that round's going to hit me too. That's what it's all about. And putting yourself in that situation, it's really, everything is negotiable. Everything's negotiable. It's well, you did this because it was the right, no, those every day though, who's falling on grenades? I mean, who even thinks about that? Jason Dunham from Scioto, New York. Grenade falls on the ground. He jumps on it. Travis Atkins grabs a suicide bomber with a vest. He knows what's going to happen. He's wrestling with a suicide bomber. That's not something that, it's not that he was a Burger King employee that saw a guy walk in with a vest. That's a totally different story. This was a professional soldier who knew there was a threat around him every single day. And when the threat came upon his unit, he realized that his life would end, but other people's life would continue. And that's the most beautiful thing in the world to me. It really is.
Other questions?
David, Iraq was a controversial war. What were your thoughts when you were there, and what do you think about it looking back?
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, when I deployed to Iraq, I didn't even think we were going to get a combat infantryman's badge or a combat patch. We thought the war was over. We were there for sustainment operations. We didn't think the kinetic fight was as serious as it was going to be. And I got there at the end of OIF 1 and all of OIF 2. Operation Iraqi Freedom, everything, the wheels came off the cart in 2004. It was 5 different enemies that we were fighting. You had the regime loyalists, you had loyal Ba'athist party members, you had the Shia, people talk about the Iranian proxy war, but, there was a lot of bad guys, foreign jihadists, you name it. It was a tough fight. I don't know what, I really can't look back at it now and say, I didn't get a vote. I just served. If my country sent me to wherever they sent me to fight, I would do it. But I can't tell you that looking back and seeing how a lot of people tend to look at the valor of a generation and say, well, are these good wars or bad wars? Iraq veterans are walking around with chips on their shoulder because they're regarded as the bad war, the war of choice, the war that was based on bad intelligence. And we're free to think and decide whatever you want. I think the narrative is written on that. But I would just caution us to not make the veteran feel the weight of that. I don't think it's their responsibility. 99% of these men and women served with honor and distinction, and we really shouldn't have to apologize for where our nation sends us to fight.
Dave, what was going through your head that day in that house?
I mean, a lot of things. That house fight is really broken into 3 different fights. The citation and everything else reads like it was one continuous. This was multiple hours. We're walking around. We walk into a building. It's not the front door. We're accustomed to being shot at from the front door when you walk into a building. These guys lured us into the building, and it was a secondary door inside the building. But again, I got a team leader, a saw gunner. Chris Oley opens a door, immediately sees insurgents with machine guns, and just reflexively puts saw fire down. Without doing that, we don't have any ability to make a decision. If we take a casualty in that doorway, now we're fighting to retrieve and repatriate his wounded body or his fallen body, but now we're going to lose more men because we have someone in the fatal funnel that's down. Warren Misa pulls him out of the doorway, saves his life. Oli puts down that fire and is able to give us ability to make a decision. I'm literally the only guy on the other side of the room. The entire platoon is on one side. I'm over here. I got 2 machine gunners, Joey Swanson and Jameson McDaniel, young, early 20s. They've got the 240 Bravo, which is the modern equivalent of the M60. You saw John Rambo hold that with one arm. That's not what you do with an M60. It's very. We all tried that at the range, but it's hard to do. These kids took an M240 Bravo, like John J. Rambo, and shoulder mounted that and fired hundreds of rounds at point blank range. That alone, effective fire, to do that alone was enough to get their heads down so that we could make a decision. If no one is doing that from the outside of the building or the inside of the building, we're waiting on an RPG to sizzle through or a grenade, and we're not even here to even talk about that. And so my only real thought process was, I need God, I need a prayer, I need some sort of peace. I was trying to think of all these Psalms. I grew up memorizing verses. and in the moment I needed a verse, I couldn't think of anyone. And I saw the Exorcist movie, and that was the only thing that was popping through my head was that stupid movie. And I thought of my wife, my baby. I thought of my parents. When you go through a graveyard and you see someone born and died on the same day, I always see that on a tombstone and think, that's got to be horrible. And I just imagined, someone could explain to my son why, I chose to do this. I wanted someone to be able to articulate to my kid that it's not that I don't love you, it's that I love these guys too, and we're in this together. And that's why it's so important to me to tell as many Gold Star families that, if the roles were reversed, their sons would be talking to my mom, their sons would be talking to my kids, and their sons would be saying, don't forget, what your son did, because it's with us every single day. We're able to get gray hair and have life events because they gave their life for us. But yeah, there was a lot of things going through my head. None of it was real, not really worthy of it was just, you're thinking these guys are shooting at you. People talk, in a house fight, everyone gets hurt. No one's not injured. There's no drywall in Iraq. There's no drywall in the Middle East. These are concrete walls. You fire an automatic machine gun or a semi-automatic rifle, those rounds are tic-tac-toeing everywhere. And you're going to get gouged in the face, glass, metal, fragments everywhere. These guys everyone's bleeding, everyone's hurt, but you're still in it because you just got to make sure that the hardest part for young people when you're in that situation is to realize that no matter what happens, you have to take that shooter out. No matter what happens, you have to stop the threat, because if you render aid, if you help your buddy out, you're going to have more people hurt. And it's very difficult to see someone you care about stressed out and injured and not reflexively just want to give him comfort and give him aid. You've got to go forward. And I was lucky enough to serve with guys who every time that happened, they went forward. And I'm here because of it.
The last part of that fight,
Yeah.
lengthy, if I remember correctly.
The last part of that fight was, something that is with me, and it's really tough. And, again, I probably never thought that I'd spend the rest of my life in that moment, but, I was fighting for my life, and, it's what happened.
Thank you.
Other questions?
David, you mentioned earlier wanting to represent, first of all, congratulations on your service.
Thanks.
You talked about wanting to represent and not letting the Army down. Do you see yourself taking on an even more active role after the ceremony?
I don't, I'm going to serve. All I've ever wanted to do was serve my country. I happen to believe that veterans make the best neighbors you could have. I think we make great employees. I think we make great teachers. I think we make great friends. I think that we are all too reminded of folks that zig when they should have zagged, and we like to point out because so few people that serve make mistakes. We always concentrate on the few that do. But the vast majority of these men and women are honorable, they're decent, and they're an institution, and we should put them on that pedestal when they come home. And whatever the Army wants me to do, I'm forever grateful to the United States Army. They gave me purpose and direction. They gave my life meaning and value. I am a better human being because of my service, and I think most of the people that I've served with can all tell you the same thing. And I encourage any man or woman that wants to become an individual in their community to serve the United States military.
And you had a question, if that, we
Yeah.
can wrap it up with that.
David, I gotta think you're the first theater major who's Medal of Honor winner. I just wondered
Thanks for
how
bringing
that
that
journey
up.
happened, where you
Yeah.
joined the Army.
I guess I grew up in Orleans County in a small rural town, And in Lindenville, I was blessed to be able, in a small high school, you can be on the sports team, be in a play, and play an instrument. In some big high schools, you can't do that. You got to choose. You're either a sports guy, you're a music guy, or you're on the science club. In Lindenville, because we were so small, we all could do the same thing. And I just loved being on teams. I loved even losing. I loved being a part of a culture that we all shared something together. Win or lose, we were part of something. I was really enamored by that, that whole thing. And I found those guys in college. I found those guys in the Army. And I'm really motivated by that dynamic in a group. We share things, we experience things, and I love that camaraderie.